so excited for our second workshop of the spring. We are here to talk about when is the right time to pursue a graduate degree. I mean, you are all professionals in your careers. You are all potentially thinking about it or are already in a graduate degree, or maybe you're considering pursuing an additional graduate degree if you've already got one. This is an extremely pertinent and relevant topic for anybody who's thought about more education. This workshop is for you. I'm really excited for you to experience our guest speaker this evening. It's going to be really insightful, very data-driven. It's going to have a lot of facts and figures that will hopefully help you make the most educated decision about what makes the most sense for you after, I guess, this workshop this evening. So, by the way, my name is Garrett Mintz. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion, and really, you've already started meeting with your mentor. That is awesome. Hopefully you've already set up your first meeting. Maybe you've even already set up your second meeting. If that's the case, that's amazing news. But the focus for this workshop is how can you be intentional about really taking steps forward for yourself professionally. Now, I know that these workshops are on a wide array of topics. Obviously, our first workshop was on how to transition into a managerial role. This workshop's about determining whether or not it's worth it to pursue a graduate degree. But I really want to challenge you that when you're in your mentor meetings, that you are customizing it to your experience for what you want to accomplish with your own career. Because I recognize that some of these workshops are more relevant to you than others, and that's, by the way, completely okay. We bring in really amazing world-class guest speakers to come in and be our guests for these workshops, and that's fantastic. And the ideal goal is that all of them are relevant to you, but I recognize that it varies. And some workshops are going to be more relevant to some people than other people. But what I want you to recognize is that even in this workshop, even if you feel like it's not the most relevant to you, that there's a lot of nuggets. There's a lot of topics that we talk about with our guest speaker that I believe can apply to a lot of situations that you may face in your life. So I'm really excited to get started. Now, one thing that I really want to focus in on, and this is something we talked about last time in our workshop, and that is understanding your strategy, your story, and your state. Those are the three keys to being successful in this program. The most important one, that being state. So physically, where are you? What is going on in your world? Are you having a bad day? Are you having a stressful day? Are you having a difficult time with your significant other? Did your dog just die? I don't care what is going on with your world, no matter how stressful, no matter how mad, no matter how angry, no matter how bad anything is going on in your world, you can change your state in a matter of seconds because your emotions drive your emotions. So what I want you to do right now to get yourself ready for this workshop is I want you to stand up and I want you to shake it out. I want you to shimmy it loose. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just go, yeah! Just let it loose, let it out, let it go. Because what you're doing is you're letting blood flow to your brain. You're releasing endorphins in your brain. You're getting yourself into a state conducive for receiving information. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when you sit down for too long, you have diminishing returns on your mental investment. Your likelihood of retaining that information is significantly minimized. So I want to challenge you to get up, shake it out, let it loose, get your blood flowing, because when your blood's flowing to your brain, your likelihood of actually remembering this information is significantly higher. Now, when you're going into your mentor relationship, when you're meeting with your mentor, if you can get your blood flowing before those mentor meetings, you're much more likely to retain the information your mentor has to say for you and to you. But if you don't get yourself into a state ready for this mentor relationship, your likelihood of making the most out of that experience diminishes. So I want you to get yourself into a state. Now, the next key is your story. What is the story you tell yourself? Why will you be successful? I'd love to know it. In fact, actually, if you could, post in the comment section, why are you going to be successful? I mean, if in your mind you think, hey, I'm cool with mediocre, I'm cool with just settling, this program is not for you. I can tell you that right now. If you're thinking to yourself, hey, I want to settle, I just want to kind of like not really aspire for too much, you wouldn't be in this mentor program. So what I'm here to tell you is shoot for the stars. Have big, crazy, hairy, audacious goals. And by the way, don't let anybody else judge you for your goal, because your goals are your own. So what is audacious to you may not be audacious to somebody else, and what is audacious to somebody else may not be audacious to you, but that is okay. It's not for you to judge. It is for you to make strides for yourself, because at the end of the day, this program is about personal growth and confidence, helping you put yourself into the best position for you to succeed. So if you can tell yourself a story for why you will be marginally to exemplary, significantly better than where you're at the beginning of this program, that is awesome, and that is where I want you to go. That's where I want you to be. Now, the last part is your strategy. What is the strategy that you're going to do to start putting yourself in the best position to succeed? Now, this program, this workshop specifically, is about when is the right time to pursue a graduate degree. Now, one thing that I strongly encourage you to do, because here's the thing, at the end of the day, Your strategies are all about routines. We think about routines both in the bad sense as well as the good sense. Bad routines are, things that we consider habits, bad habits, they're bad. But we typically have a negative connotation around habits just because of so many bad habits we've heard about. But there's a lot of things and a lot of beneficial things with good habits. So what are things that you can do on a daily, regular basis that helps you prepare for anything that you want to be better at? That is what I want to focus on. So one strategy that you can implement is implementing a SWOT analysis on a monthly basis of your life, of your career, of your higher education experience, of anything. Doing a SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So if you're currently right now in a job and you're thinking to yourself, I'm contemplating a graduate degree, but I don't really know right now, what you'll want to think about is, what are the strengths of pursuing a graduate degree? What are the weaknesses of pursuing a graduate degree? What are the opportunities of staying in your current role? And what are the threats to leaving your current role for this graduate degree? If you can lay this out for yourself, it will help you on a substantial level towards making the most educated decision for yourself for why you should or should not pursue a graduate degree. Now, our guest speaker this evening is going to talk about the literal specific facts and figures of financially, when does it make sense for you to get a graduate degree, and when does it not make sense for you to get a graduate degree? And so I think you're going to really enjoy what our guest speaker has to say about this, because the insight is unbelievable. I think you're going to really enjoy it. But in terms of the strategies, I want you to do a SWOT analysis to help you prepare for that. The other thing is, I want you to start having more informational interviews beyond just your mentor. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what stage of life you are in. You can have conversations with people. Just because you're not a quote unquote current college student in a collegiate sense, you're still a student of life. You're still a student of professional outcomes. And by being willing to admit that you're still a student, you can take the knowledge of somebody else. You can say, hey, I'm a student. I'm interested in learning more about XYZ field. Would you be willing to have a coffee with me or a conversation with me? That is a great conversation starter for you to learn more about other fields, because at the end of the day, it's not about stagnating. It is about growing. It is about learning. It is about being uncomfortable and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So those are the key points I really want you to take away from our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to jump into our guest speaker. If you've got any questions or comments for our guest speaker, please post them in the comments section. By the way, if you've not connected with me on LinkedIn yet, please do so. We have a LinkedIn community, a Ambition in Motion group where all of us participate in it. We can post our questions. Our entire community can answer them or see them or relate to them. It's a really cool place to be. If you don't have a LinkedIn, absolutely get a LinkedIn. If you do have a LinkedIn and you have not connected with me, I strongly encourage it. I'm so excited to get started, and I'm so excited for you to experience our guest speaker this evening. Thanks for your time. I'm looking forward to get this guest interview going. So I am so excited to have Emma Kerr here this evening for our workshop. She is somebody who's awesome, who's got a ton of insight on the realm of when is the right time to pursue additional education. She's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to really what is most important in terms of to determine for the factors of whether or not, hey, I should pursue this additional graduate degree, or maybe I shouldn't, and how all the factors can be assessed and played with. And so I'm really excited to have Emma here this evening. So Emma Kerr is the paying for college reporter at U.S. News and World Report. Prior to joining U.S. News, she covered education in Maryland for the Frederick News Post and made stops at the Chronicle of Higher Education and the Daily Beast. Emma, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Emma, this is such a hot button topic because I know that a lot of young professionals, or just a lot of professionals in general that we work with in our mentor program in Ambition in Motion, some of them have graduate degrees, some of them don't have graduate degrees and are considering getting a graduate degree. I would love to learn, just based on your initial research and reporting, what are some of the best practices for determining when is the right time to go about pursuing that additional degree? And when is the right time to start thinking about that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I've heard in my reporting has been to really know the purpose of your graduate degree and your graduate program. a bachelor's degree, it offers a lot of opportunities to kind of explore, do some career exploration, try a couple classes, take a variety of classes. Graduate degrees are very different in that they're focused on a specific area and they really drill down into that area. So when you pursue a graduate degree, the first thing I've heard is that you really need to, from experts, is that you really need to know what you're interested in and what you hope to get out of it. So it's kind of, and especially from a paying for that program side of things, you really want to know how would my income change if I were to pursue this graduate degree, and how would my job prospects change in a very specific way. And I think one thing that I've heard advised a lot from experts is just students go out and have some informational interviews, or do research, go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and look up a couple of different things they might be interested in and get a sense of what the median salary is, what the growth in terms of employment opportunities are for that field. So those are kind of a couple things that you want to consider before pursuing a graduate degree. I think that the right time is the time when a student has taken an individual has taken a lot of time to do that kind of research and to know exactly what they want and exactly what they want to get out of that program.
Yeah, I think that's really good insight. So really, if I'm hearing you right, honing in on the specific thing that you want to get out of this. I feel like I'll see this quite often. Well, I guess I'd love to learn your thoughts on this. Where does the role of passion play into this? I think I will often see some people go ahead and pursue a graduate degree in a space that they're really passionate about, and sometimes they'll have an assumption about whether or not they think they can actually do this without the graduate degree, and they think, well, I have to get a graduate degree to do this sort of thing, and it's what I'm passionate about. From your perspective, where does the role of passion play into this?
Yeah, that's a tough question for me because I write about financial aid and student loan debt every day, all day. So I can get a little jaded, but I know that, obviously passion should play a huge role in what you're doing. If you're not passionate about it, it's hard to be successful in something that you're not interested in. But at the same time, should you pursue a grad degree just because you're passionate in that subject? Maybe not. And I think I pulled up a quick little some numbers here from College Scorecard data, which is the Department of Education's data on colleges, and it gives kind of some earnings data by field. And I think that's really another great resource for someone considering a grad program. But a couple of and this is an analysis from a professor at Seton Hall University, but some of the lowest earnings areas in specifically for graduate programs are areas like music, social work, health and fitness, teacher education, mental, social health services, fine arts, studio arts. Those are the lowest earnings, and that's got a median earning of about $35,000. And I mean, that's a huge thing to consider when you're talking about a graduate program, because we kind of know from looking at student loan debt numbers that 40% of the student loan debt is debt taken out by graduate students. So that's a huge chunk of the national student loan debt. And when you're thinking about borrowing, potentially $50,000, $100,000 to go to graduate school to pay for all of your cost of living expenses, to give up that time when you could be earning an income, or that time when you could be saving for your retirement, you really have to think about all those different costs and how long it's going to take you to pay back that debt. And if you're looking at a salary that's as low as in the 30s, when you could potentially be paying more than that to go to college, to go to grad school, it becomes a big question where you kind of start to say, well, my passion is music, maybe. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue music, but maybe it means, a graduate program might not be right for you, depending on the program and depending on your estimated salary after graduation. So, don't ignore your passions, but should your passions always lead you to a graduate degree? I don't think so. And I think that's what kind of experts and the data is showing us when it comes to student loan debt, and seeing this debt kind of follow students for years and years and years. So yeah, I think it's something to consider. I think the expert rule that everyone kind of says is it's a generalization, but the rule is that you shouldn't borrow more than your estimated salary the year after you graduate. So whatever your salary would be when you get out of that grad program, that's the cap. That's the ideal cap on how much you borrow to go to that program. So, passion should definitely enter into it, but I would kind of keep that amount in mind as sort of like, just as a benchmark for you when you're kind of balancing passion with what makes sense.
That was gold, Emma. Can you say that one more time? I think for anybody in the audience that maybe like potentially glossed over that point, say that one more time. What is the cap for what you should be taking out in terms of debt for when it comes to your additional graduate degree?
Yeah, so the common rule, and it is a generalization, but yeah, the common rule is you don't want to borrow more than your salary the year you graduate. So whatever entry job you're aiming for the year after grad school, whatever that salary is, that is your cap on how much you should borrow for that program.
Mind blown. I feel like that is such a critical, what you just outlined right there was so crucial. And now I think that there's a couple counterpoints to that, because I think that there's something really interesting here. But before I ask this question, I want to ask the audience a question real quick. And that is, are you considering pursuing a graduate degree? And if so, what are you interested in pursuing a graduate degree in? And by the way, there's no right or wrong graduate degree, but I think Emma has shed some light on the data, the research, the facts that exist about pursuing additional education so far. And I think that, I'd love to learn from the audience perspective. Please post in the comments section, what are some degree paths that you'd be interested in pursuing if you're interested in pursuing additional education? And have you started looking at what the cost of that may be versus the actual pay? And, does that line up? Does this follow this rule of thumb that Emma has outlined? In terms of it not being any more than what that annual salary could be at the end of completion. So I love that insight. The question, though, I had that's kind of like a counterpoint to that is imposter syndrome. How do we fight imposter syndrome? And by that, I just mean as it pertains to, let's say, a graduate degree. I know that it could be very easy to assume, like, well, shoot, if I've only got an undergraduate degree, how am I supposed to imagine that I could do a role that I think requires a graduate degree? Like, I feel like I would be an imposter in that type of role. Do you have any suggestions for people on how to fight imposter syndrome or find ways that really kind of can challenge their own notions of imposter syndrome? Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's been some talk in this space about employers who kind of expect a grad degree for no real reason, just to put it on the the job site or whatever. So I mean, I think, yeah, it's a tough question because everyone has probably experienced that at some point, and a grad program gives you, or a graduate degree gives you that sense of kind of security or just a concrete assurance. But I mean, I can speak to my own experience, and I don't have a graduate degree, and I feel like it really depends on your industry how much that will end up carrying. In my industry, in my field, internships are kind of very, very critical to breaking into the industry, to getting a job, real tangible experience and something that you can show for it. In my example, as a journalist, the thing I can show for an internship or that's different from a grad degree is I can have, a clip, I can have an article that, was really well researched or well received, or something that felt, investigative, or use data. I can showcase my skills through my work in that way. And I think if you're interested in a field where there is opportunity to just get some real tangible experience in that and have something to show for it, maybe if you're a web developer, you create a site just for fun, and that's something that you can use in job interviews that is tangible. So, I mean, I would say imposter syndrome, a grad degree can help you, mitigate that, but also so can other forms of tangible work experience. And that's probably what I would recommend.
I think if I'm hearing you right, one of the biggest things that you're uncovering here is a lot of the conditioning that we have had as an American society, or really as I think as a Western culture society, that you must get additional education. Like additional education is a correlation to success. And I think what you're shedding light on is that that's not necessarily the case. Now, can it lead to it? Absolutely. But I think the common assumption that more education is better may not necessarily be true. And by the way, when I say more education, I mean more credentialized education. I believe that there's a ton of education that one can pursue on their own through their company, through informational interviews, which Emma's already outlined, and through online and the internet. And just the fact that there's so much data and information on an open source, having that, that I guess credential, or having that token, or having that thing that like backs you up may not necessarily be the thing that you need to get the education you need. Am I kind of touching on a key point there, Emma?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, like you said, informational interviews, finding other ways to showcase what you can do outside of education is really powerful. And we see that that's absolutely not just the case in graduate programs. There's a lot of people wondering, is a bachelor's degree as worth it as maybe it has been in the past, as tuition prices continue to rise. I think it's the University of Chicago that's going to hit over $100,000 in expected cost of attendance next year. So I think that's definitely becoming a question is, what salary am I actually going to earn after this degree, whatever it is, and is it worth it to invest so much time and money, or are there alternative ways?
No, I love that perspective, but I think there's one component that, I think now let's flip it, I guess, a little bit. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the redeeming qualities of pursuing additional education. One of those, I would say, it's got to be the network. I mean, we're running a mentor program where we're connecting people together. I would imagine that the network of who you would meet is critical. So if you are going to pursue an additional education, well, yeah, I was gonna say, what are some of the redeeming qualities? But I'd love to specifically talk about the networking component of that first.
Yeah, sure. And so I don't want to give the impression that you should not go to college. For sure, if you're interested in this, there are always ways to do that. And I also want to note that, the cost of college that you're seeing on a website, it can be $100,000. It's very, very typical for students to receive financial aid. I think graduate students are, I think the Department of Education, graduate students are receiving about 70% of graduate students are receiving some form of financial aid to help them pay for graduate school. So I just want to say that really quickly, because it's not all doom and gloom. There is a lot of financial aid out there. There are a lot of fully funded programs out there, so that even if you're not going on to become a doctor or a dentist, which are some of the higher median earnings, that doesn't mean that graduate school isn't possible for you or rewarding for you. And I think in terms of networking, that can be a huge, huge component, especially if you're in a career, like if you're pursuing maybe an MFA, or, you're looking to kind of get experience with other writers or other social workers, other teachers, that can be a big, big part of finding success later in your career. So there are a lot of tangible, huge, huge benefits to education, and there are a lot of ways to make it happen if it's what you truly want to do. And I think there's a smart way to do it that also considers kind of the practical side of things. But I would say networking is definitely one of the bigger pluses of any graduate program, just bringing like-minded people together in a room and seeing if there are opportunities that come from that.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I'm still in touch. I still stay in touch with many of my friends from college, and I reach out to them frequently. I know that one of a really cool story to kind of convey the power of who's in your network was I met a woman at a conference in Colorado. The conference was called the Global Minded Conference, and when I was there, I met this woman named Maureen, and she did her MBA at Kellogg at Northwestern. And in her MBA class, she had met and befriended a lot of people, but one of which was specifically a guy who was from my neck of the woods. I live in Indiana, by the way. Turns out he is the CEO of Cummins, a Fortune 500 company, a huge company. And she said, you both should connect. I think that you both would really enjoy meeting with each other. And he did. And he's been extremely supportive and really nice. And I guess the point I'm making is that there's a lot of really cool people that you can meet through an MBA course. And so potentially being strategic about what kind of education you're pursuing and what you're looking to get out of it, I think is probably really critical. So I think that, I guess the moral of what I'm saying is, you know, it's, I guess maybe there's a belief that I have that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. By pursuing a graduate education where you're surrounded by the best of the best in a specific area, you are going to upskill yourself by being around these people. And so I think that there's something there that should be considered in terms of what you're looking for in terms of a graduate degree in a program. But what do you think about that, Emma?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I got this job, you know, in part because I had a friend from college. We had worked together. You know, she was a few years older than me, and she recommended me for the job that I have now. And I think that that's a huge part of getting any job. I mean, to have someone recommend you who has worked at that company in the past or works at that company currently, that's huge. And I would also, and I would just say that, you know, being around people who are like-minded, like you said, can play a really huge role. I know, one thing that might be helpful to say too is that it's kind of what you do when you're in college, whether it's undergrad or a grad program, that matters as well. So like, are you getting involved in maybe, volunteering, or are you getting involved in maybe a club, a student organization, even drilling down further, if you were to go to law school, what kind of journals are you, I think there are a lot of different ways to think about that. What kind of projects are you working on, to really focus on drilling down into what you're interested in as specifically as possible, and then to kind of be surrounded by people who are interested in that very specific thing as well, I think can pay off.
Yeah, I love that. And that kind of leads to the question I had about mapping out your career path and your education and how that can play in a role. So do you have any suggestions or tips on how people can go about really doing a good job of mapping out their path of like, where do I want to go? Where do I want to be in my future? I know earlier in this workshop and in previous workshops, I've discussed setting out a story for yourself for why you will be successful. And so I wonder, do you have any tips or suggestions on how people can go about like laying down this path of like, okay, great. If I'm able to get this opportunity, then this will lead to this opportunity, which then could lead to me getting my MBA or whatever, MFA or any other professional graduate degree. And then that could lead to the next job. I guess, do you have any suggestions on laying out that map?
I mean, this is kind of just, my personal opinion, but I don't feel like you can map out every step of a career. I know I would not have mapped out myself being where I am now if I had tried that 5 years ago, but you can speak generally, I think, and that just having a vision or a couple visions about what 5 years, 2 years will look like for you. I mean, that's a huge step of meeting any goal, is saying, my goal, and in my case, I know my goal is kind of, I wanted to be a journalist, a reporter at a national outlet. I wanted to be living in DC. Those are very broad ideas. But then, once you establish, okay, this is my broad goal, and to get there, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. That can be huge. You can't necessarily say this is the company, this is the year, this is going to happen. But I do think that setting out a general map is huge and can really help you. To bring it back to my work a little bit, from my perspective, if you're kind of looking at a couple different colleges, you're looking at a couple different fields, doing the research to figure out, median earnings from those, or, we kind of have like an idea of a formula, which is like, how many years will it take for your investment in college to pay off? So if you're getting a $10,000 bump in your salary as a result of your graduate degree, and you paid $50,000 to go to that grad program, it's going to take you 5 years for that investment to even start paying off. So that kind of planning and thinking in advance, whether it's financial or whether it's just in the direction that you want your career to go, I think those are huge parts. I mean, you have to have a plan, and you have to, especially today with the amount of student loan debt people have and how that is stopping people from starting a family, buying a home, investing, things like that, you really have to have a plan and know what you will get out of each move that you make, I think. But that doesn't mean you can't change it. And I know I've changed mine a million times. Who hasn't? I think there's a lot of changing and trying something. I think you can't know what you like unless you try it. So, if you try something, it's not something that you like, try something else. And don't feel discouraged if that changes your plan or your timeline or whatever. But I just think, I think a combination of a lot of planning and especially making sure that it makes sense for you financially, because you don't want to be in a situation where you have a plan, in terms of what you're passionate about, and you have a plan in terms of what you're interested in and what the kind of company you want to work, but then, halfway through you run out of money, you can't afford to finish your degree program, you're left with debt. I mean, the horror stories are abound. So, but, so you have to kind of plan it practically in terms of the financial side, and also plan in terms of what you're passionate about and what you would like to see happen. Maybe make a vision board. I don't know if that's your thing. But yeah, and then ultimately be okay if your plan changes.
I love that. I think that's fantastic advice. I love the example. Well, I think you're absolutely right. You can't plan out every step of your life for the next 5 years. It's impossible. But I think it is important to have an idea, a general idea of like, this is where I want to go. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be stagnant. Or rather, you're going to keep going on a path that you've got really no control over. If you're not intentional about where you like to go, you won't know if you actually got to where you wanted to be. So I'd love to ask the audience right now to post in the comment section, where would you like to be in 5 years? And it doesn't necessarily have to be something specific, but where would you like to be? I mean, hopefully it's not exactly where you're at right now. It's a little bit complacent. I want to see some growth. I want to see an opportunity for you to be there and be where you want to be. That's an elevated version of where you're at right now. So yeah, I love for anybody in the audience to post in the comment section, where would you like to be in 5 years? So I want to talk about online education. I want to talk about that because I think that's become an increasingly popular choice for people to pursue graduate education or an additional degree. What is your thoughts on online education?
Yeah, so I've written a bit about online education, and those programs are kind of popping up like crazy at the moment. I met with like the Coursera CEO the other week, and he was just saying how many people are really involved and getting degrees that way. New universities who are joining Coursera, who are doing online graduate degrees that look exactly the same as they would if you had gone and gotten them on campus. And that's just, Coursera is just one example. There are so many platforms, and every college kind of does it a little bit differently. But the biggest thing I would caution from my perspective about online programs is number one, I think just looking at the costs and making sure that the online program that you're interested in is not more expensive than if you were to get it on campus, and if it is, being sure that makes sense for you, because in a lot of people's cases, they can't receive a degree on campus because of whatever the circumstances there are, whether that's as someone who has dependents or someone who is working full-time and wants to maintain a full-time job. An online program can be huge in terms of allowing more access for people who, for whatever reason, can't go on campus. But at the same time, maybe, be a little cautious about colleges that are upcharging significantly for that kind of luxury, that kind of convenience of learning online. So, be aware of what is the value of this degree, and how do the online degree costs compare to the on-campus degree costs. I think that's something to note. And with a lot of, I've heard a lot of stories about students with who are in online degree programs who have gotten into those programs and are paying for those programs through an employer program. And even I've heard some stories about employers who not only pay for your online grad degree, but also that will then result when you complete it in like a $25,000 salary bump or something. There are kind of those programs out there which can be crazy advantageous to a person if they're able to, both increase their salary and get a great education if that's the case. But yeah, so I would be a little bit cautious just to kind of know, well, what extra fees and tuition costs are they charging me for this convenience? That's the first thing that comes to mind for me. But I think in terms of, the way that the Department of Education looks at graduate degrees, there's not really a distinction between degrees that are earned on campus and degrees that are earned online. I think at the end of the day, what you want to think about is how will an employer see this degree if they ask you and you let them know it is an online program. Does that change how an employer sees you? And I think that what I'm hearing from experts that more and more employers don't care how you got your degree. So that's something to consider, but also know that maybe that stereotype, I guess, is changing a bit. And also I would say to just consider, the quality, I guess, of the instruction, I think is the other thing I just want to note. I think maybe even going on Rate My Professor and seeing who is teaching these online courses, and how does that the quality of those faculty members change. Are they faculty? Are they full-time faculty? Are they associate professors, assistant professors? So that's one thing I would note. But those were a couple of things that I would note about online degrees. Yeah.
I think you've shed a lot of light on that. A few things that I was surprised to learn. I didn't realize that there are some online courses that will charge more than the in-person on-campus courses. I did not realize that. That just seems asinine to me, because I feel like so much of the value you get from education is the in-person networking, like meeting other people. You get none of that through an online degree. I mean, sure, you get the convenience, and don't get me wrong, I recognize that if you've got children, or if you've got dependents, or if you've got, everybody's circumstance is different. But I mean, I feel like the network is such a critical part of your education. I mean, it's more or less, it could be the opportunities that end up coming to you. I mean, shoot, I think what's the stat that 70% of all job opportunities go to somebody who knows somebody at that company. And so if you're not meeting anybody from your graduate degree program, I mean, I feel like you're doing yourself a major disservice. But I don't know, that's my thoughts.
Well, I would say there are some programs that allow you to meet fellow students, online students. So you'll meet like once or twice a semester, or maybe have like an orientation together. And I think a lot of them do sort of like online discussion forums. So I think there is some, I totally see your point, and that could be a concern depending on the field you're interested in. But it seems like there's some opportunity to meet another person. And I think it's just hard, from a cost perspective, if you're able to maintain a full-time job and you're earning maybe, $30,000, $50,000 a year, and you've also spent this whole time, working toward a grad degree, you're able to do it kind of at your own pace, able to do it part-time. That can make a huge difference in terms of, ultimately not having that loss of income added on to the cost of the program, plus whatever debt you've taken. So it can make a big difference cost-wise, even if the program is more expensive than an on-campus program. But it really, really comes down to what your situation is and what you're looking to get out of the program. I mean, there are even a lot of online bachelor's degree programs that are coming up right now. And I know for a lot of students, if you're that kind of traditional, what we used to think about as traditional students as being 18-year-olds, you don't want to go to an online bachelor's program. You want to live in the dorm. You want to meet people. You want to go to the whatever. But if you're in a different place in life and that's not what you're looking to get out of the degree, then maybe an online program is for you.
That's awesome. Thanks for shedding light on that. That makes a lot of sense. But another big point that you brought up previously was the idea and the notion that a business could actually pay for your education. How does that work?
Yeah, so this is becoming an increasingly common thing, especially for these online programs, because they allow you to continue at your place of employment and then also be working toward a degree. So yes, some employers will offer tuition programs. This is, like I said, becoming more common, and an employer would pay all or some of your graduate tuition in order for you to receive a graduate degree. And the thing to note about that as well, though, is that can sometimes come with some strings, such as requiring you to stay at a company for a given number of years. It might also limit what you can study in what your degree will be in. Oftentimes, the degree has to be in the area that you're employed in. That would benefit the company.
I was about to say that makes a lot of sense. So I'd be curious. So how do those conversations happen? Does the employer come to the employee? Does the employer come to you and say, "Hey, we love if you had an MBA. You don't have one. We love to contribute towards this"? Or is it the employee that comes up and initiates the conversation and says, "Hey, I think I'm doing great in my role. I think that there's an opportunity to grow, but I think I could really amplify my efforts in this company with an MBA. Would you be willing to help contribute to that?" What are your thoughts on how does that situation type of thing come about?
I mean, every company is different. I would say it's typically in like a company policy, so it should be pretty accessible for you to learn. Does my company offer this? And if so, what does that look like? And I'm sure that, reaching out to HR would be an option. And anyone interested in that should go for that and ask about it. It never hurts to, go to HR and ask them, does my company have this program? If so, what are the requirements? What are some of those potential strings that come along with that? And even some employers also offer help paying off student loan debt. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But I think that it varies based on companies. But generally, there's no harm in asking that question. Although I think it can come up either way, from the employer itself or from the employee.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'd love to ask the audience right now, for the companies that you work at, have you had this conversation with your HR team, or have you brought up this conversation? And if no, why not? And if so, what was the response? I'd love for you to share that in the comment section. I'd love to see what other people and what other people's experiences are, because I think it's easy to assume that, oh, my company definitely doesn't do that, or, oh, I shouldn't even broach that conversation. But if you see other people doing it, you see other people within this program achieving success and achieving outcomes that they wanted, that being the company paying for more education. I mean, shoot, hopefully it gives you the confidence to go up and ask, because you got nothing to lose.
Yeah, I also want to add on that really quickly that you don't necessarily have to already be at a company that offers some kind of tuition assistance. I've heard from experts stories of people who have just taken maybe one course and showed the tangible gains that a company can receive from that employee learning that new skill, and then the company will go ahead and say, okay, we'll help you with the rest of your degree. So I would say, if it's something you're interested in, don't hesitate to pursue it, even if the company doesn't have a formal tuition assistance policy.
I love that hybrid suggestion. That's a fantastic idea. I think for anybody who's interested in getting additional education, yeah, okay, pay for one course, and you're not going into debt for that. And then you can showcase to your company, your employer, hey, this is what I've learned. This is how I become a better employee. Would you be willing to help with this? And I would imagine that a lot of companies would be open to that. So Emma, one thing that I see often, and I think it's a good debate here, is should I go to get a graduate degree immediately after my bachelor's, or should I work in the field for a little bit? I think you've probably touched, like, your points in the earlier parts of this workshop kind of touch on that, but I'd love to specifically learn your answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough because it's such a situational thing. But I mean, I would say, if someone is an undergrad and they know that their career field, their dream job requires a graduate degree, there's no reason. I don't see, if financially you have done your homework and you have a plan financially to pay for the graduate program, it seems like it makes sense. And it seems like we've reported a lot on the success of students going straight from undergrad to a graduate program, because that kind of gets you into your desired career maybe faster, and can help you start earning. So if you're interested in becoming an MD, it might make sense to go straight from undergrad to grad, because your undergrad work is so tied with your grad work. You have a lot of prerequisite courses you need to take, and I guess, one thing I've seen is that the undergraduate system, wherever you're in undergrad, can help you plan for grad school, can answer a lot of questions about grad school financial aid, can help you figure out your career path, what exactly you're interested in. You have that guidance and you have those resources of the undergraduate institution. And once you graduate and kind of leave that college bubble, maybe you go get a job for a couple of years, in that case, you might not have the resources from your undergraduate college to kind of help you into a graduate program. And that goes, from career counselors all the way to just faculty members who can give you recommendation letters for when you're applying to a graduate program. So that might be a benefit of going, right out of undergrad into a graduate program, and it really can depend on what you're interested in. But so many fields also really, really, really appreciate applicants who have significant life experience, work experience, and that can really make your application stand out. So I think there are some benefits to both, and it can really depend on what you're interested in. If it's something where you can't get a lot of work experience in without going and getting that graduate degree, it might make sense to go straight from undergrad into a graduate program. But if you're in a field, maybe like journalism, and that there are a lot of opportunities to showcase your abilities and to hone your abilities, it might make sense to take a couple of years before going into a graduate program. I would also say, if you don't know what you want to do, if you can't get a job, you don't know what you want to do, those are generally things that experts would say are not good reasons to go to graduate school. And, the joke is kind of, you go to grad school if you don't know what you want to do, or you can't get a job. I think that a lot of experts would say that's not the best strategy. So that's another time when it might make sense to take a couple years and try a couple of different things and really figure out, what is it that I'm interested in studying.
Say that one more time. That was another, you've been a wealth of wisdom, Emma, but that was another bit of gold that you just dropped right there. If you don't know what you want to do, don't go get a graduate degree. Don't do it. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, the only thing worse than not knowing what you want to do and not having a job is still not liking what you do, not having a job, or maybe having a job you don't like, and also having $100,000 of debt. So, I think take the time to try a couple of different careers, try a couple jobs, get a couple internships, if you're unsure of what you want to do.
I love that. That is so critical. Yeah. Because not only are you going from, hey, I don't know what I want to do, and I hope this graduate degree can help me, to now I don't know what I want to do, and I'm in $100,000 of debt. So I think that's a huge, huge point that you just made right there. So I want to transition this, because we are obviously a mentor program, and we help facilitate and connect and build mentor relationships among people. So everybody who's participating in this program has a mentor. How can they leverage their mentor to better prepare themselves for college? I mean, I would imagine that, as a person that's using this program, is connecting with a mentor, that they could use this to set out a plan to say, hey, okay, I should go have a conversation with my HR person to see if they'd be willing to even cover this. If not, this is what the cost of this education would be at these different universities that I'm interested in going into, and this is what my salary would be after achieving this degree. And then ultimately working with the mentor to kind of see, is there another alternative strategy that you can use to go about getting that education that you want, or getting to the end goal that of where you want to be. I bet that would be a great way that you could leverage your mentor. Emma, what are your thoughts on how a person who's in this program right now, who's got a mentor, can leverage that mentor's expertise to help them launch into where they want to go?
Well, those are all great suggestions. A thing I would add to that list is, I have tons of data, and I could throw out a ton of college scorecard data and Bureau of Labor Statistics data, but it's just data, and it's just medians, averages, things like that. So I think a mentor's role can really be to, put real people and real experience behind those kind of estimates. So I was talking earlier about one way to know how long it's going to take for your grad degree to start to pay off. I was saying that you have to know how much your salary is going to go up as a result of that grad degree, and that's really a hard question to answer. And I think that a mentor's role can be, okay, you want to go into your conversation with your mentor having done a lot of research and having know what programs are out there, where are they, what is the median salary in my region for this thing that I'm interested in, this role that I'm interested in. But the data and all that information out there can only go so far. If you have a mentor who can speak with personal experience or connect you to folks who have personal experience, or just tell you more about that industry and what the salaries are really like and what the experience of that job is really like, maybe you can say, my goal with this program is to say, if you want to be a physician, your goal might be to help people and to make a difference in people's lives. And if you have a mentor who can say, well, here are the times when, I as a physician or, in a similar career, don't feel like I'm making a difference, or here's the most challenging part. I think that that's what a lot of the data that I have and that I work in there's a limitation to that. And so anytime a mentor can add real life experience and real tangible ideas like that are kind of going beyond the data, I feel like that's so valuable.
That's great insight. So the final question that I have, by the way, for anybody in the audience that has any questions for myself or Emma, please post them in the comment section. We will work towards answering those questions, ideally within 24 hours of this post going live. But yeah, post your questions in the comment section. We'd love to get to them and answer them. But I guess the final question I had, and this is something we kind of talked about before, was why have you decided not to pursue additional graduate education at this moment in time in your life?
Yeah, I kind of touched on that, but I think it goes back to looking at what is the return on my investment, and for me, that it just kind of didn't make sense. So I can kind of on the fly here talk about it, but if you were to try to do this in your own life, in your own area of interest, I'm a reporter. Let's say I go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and I look up, all right, the median salary for a reporter. I'm going to do this. This is an experiment right now. Let's see. So reporters, correspondents, and broadcast news analysts make a median salary of $43,490. So $43,000. That's the number that is our median salary according to BLS. So let's think like Columbia Journalism School. That's one of the more popular journalism graduate schools. When I go on their website, I'm seeing a master's degree, a full-time master's of science in journalism that has an estimated total cost of $110,000. So, these are very broad strokes ideas, but if you're looking at those two numbers, 43,000 is median salary, 110 is the estimated cost for this program. And not to pick on Columbia Journalism School, but if you're looking at those two numbers, they just don't seem to add up. And I think that's a good exercise for you to do, is look up a couple programs you're interested in, look at what the estimated cost will be to attend, and then look at the median salary for that field. And if you're seeing a pretty big disparity, at least that's what I chose in my case, to see that and say, maybe there's another way to continue on in this field that I'm so passionate about, that I love, without having to, go the path of spending that amount of money. That might be the choice you want to make. And that's the choice that I make. I hope that kind of answers your question, because at the end of the day, I think if you're able to get the education that you need other ways, that's something to explore. So that was kind of my calculation.
Emma, that was awesome. I feel like you have dropped tons of knowledge, tons of wisdom, so many nuggets in this workshop that would be extremely valuable for anybody to hear, whether or not you're pursuing a graduate degree or you're not pursuing a graduate degree. I think you have given us some great insight and wisdom. I really appreciate being here. Before we end this workshop, how can our audience find you? How can they connect with you? How can they learn more about you?
Find me on Twitter. My DMs are open. Emma R. Kerr is my handle, Emma Kerr. And yeah, DM me or send me an email. Always love to chat, open to answering any questions. And obviously all my reporting and everything that I've kind of mentioned has been drawn on from my reporting, which is all at US News. We have a whole section about paying for college, paying for graduate school. So check that out if you're looking for more information, and always happy to answer questions.
That's awesome. Well, Emma, thank you so much for being here. Everybody in the audience, thank you all for being here and watching this workshop. Like I said, if you've got any questions, please post them in the comment section. I'm looking forward to learning what you have to say and your feedback to the questions that I posed during this workshop. I look forward to our next workshop, and thank you all for being here.